for anti-racist shenanigans.
Hi, Alison.
Hey, Melissa, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, no, it's so great to be chatting with you today.
It's so great to be chatting with you today. My computer has decided to do something really weird, and I don't know why. But here we are, live on Facebook. Super magical.
Yay! All the magic.
I am having this really weird slow day. Are you having a slow day?
I'm having a very brisk day. It's invigorating.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's delightful. I'm really stoked.
Thank you for joining us all the way from Canada.
Yes.
So you're here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Yes. So I'm sharing it. I'm sharing that we're live and tagging you in it. I'm so writer at Sparkly Shoes. I love that. We are going to have some shenanigans today.
Yes.
Yay! All right. So Tell me, love, tell my audience who may not be familiar with who you are and what you do and all those things. Tell people a little bit about yourself. This really... Did you get it?
I am I'm an Indigenous woman. I'm Kwakiutl First Nation. I am a writer by trade, but part of what I do is around intercultural communication, having people have better conversations in safer communities, and doing kind of anti-racism education work around how businesses can be more inclusive in their marketing and how they show up online. So that's really been my area of focus these days. I've recently launched a program called Stay Woke, Not Broke, and it's about socially conscious marketing, and it's been just such a joy.
I am so excited about your new program that you just launched, and that's part of why we decided to go live today, was to talk about your new program, Stay Woke, Not Broke. So tell people a little bit more about why you decided to launch that program.
So what I noticed was that obviously recent events have been quite unsettling. I mean, and really to categorize them as recent events is quite disingenuous, because these are things that have been happening for hundreds of years. As Will Smith says, racism isn't getting worse, it's getting filmed. And
yes.
So there is an obligation to respond within the online space when you are supporting people in their journeys. They want to know where you stand. And I've watched some folks in the industry really struggle with their responses and really be challenged by their communities and really see challenges within their business because of the way they share their values or don't, and how they interact with their community and their level of awareness of how to support people. So I really, and I heard from a lot of my friends, you know, I know I should say something. I just don't know what to say. I don't want to look like I'm jumping on a bandwagon. I put up a black square. Is that good? Are we good now?
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, so I really wanted to be able to help people learn how to show up, how to share their values, and how to be socially conscious. Basically, like I want, and the other question was like, well, how do I keep selling things? I feel like an asshole, right? And so...
Oh, can we talk about that for a minute? I don't want to gloss over that, because I've had this conversation a lot with women who, I just had this conversation yesterday with a woman who is getting ready to start her own distillery. She's working with all these Indigenous farmers, these women who are Indigenous farmers, to make this happen. And she's like, I feel really bad for moving forward in my business. And I'm like, no.
I consider doing business as a form of activism.
Yes.
You're generating funds that can be redistributed towards social good, right?
Thank you.
So don't stop making money. You're also, you know, for me as an Indigenous woman with a disability, you know, I'm redefining what the mental map is of what people like me can do. And that's activism. That's showing up and being like, hey, I'm still here, and being
Yes.
really unapologetic about continuing to do business, continuing. I mean, you need to be sensitive to what's happening. You need to acknowledge what's going on around you. You can't be oblivious and just like throw up offers and be like, oh, well, YOLO. But, you know, it is important to keep showing up. I mean, maybe the way you do it is different,
Yes.
but I don't think that we should stop. I mean, I try to look at everything through a really intersectional lens, and, you know, looking at it from like a feminist perspective, looking at it from a racial justice perspective. You know, there's so many different ways where our identities intersect, and that I really do think it's important to keep doing business, keep selling things, keep money flowing, and keep supporting. You know, the money that I make helps support, you know, Indigenous businesses. It helps support, you know, moms that I hire to do things. You know, like, if I'm not making money, I'm not doing those things anymore, and those are important to me.
Right. And as we're running successful businesses, it also gives us the opportunity to distribute our wealth to other women of color and to who are running their own businesses, or to partner with other women who are running their own businesses. Like, it gives us opportunities. This is the thing I learned in the queer community early on in my activism in the LGBT community. And it was, put your money where your activism is. And we used to, you know, when HRC started coming out with the Pride Index, where they would rate companies about how LGBT affirming they were, we moved our money, right? Like, those of us that were in the queer community would move our money, and we would encourage our allies to move their money. So if we are doing the complicated work of asking the questions and focusing on how can we not just be insular in becoming successful, but also expanding out the wealth so that we're spreading it to other places. That I love that. Making money is activism. So good. So good.
Yeah, well, definitely. And those thoughts are definitely inspired by the work of Rachel Rogers most recently, in terms of how she's been showing up in her business and during this time, and how like she believes that being able to access and redirect wealth is key to feminism, is key to achieving social justice on behalf of other people. So
Right.
I definitely and I mean, it's created so many opportunities for collaboration. It's really highlighted a lot of kind of needs and started some really interesting conversations about how we do business. And so it's been really kind of an exciting time. Like, if we stopped working, then we would be missing all of these things. So I definitely think, you know, keep on keeping on, but, you know, be mindful of what's happening, speak out, use your platform for good, redirect your wealth where it's needed. And yeah, I mean, I saw a really elaborate spreadsheet recently that was being maintained in a Google sheet, where it was all of the top tech companies and who has made a BLM statement, who do they hire, how much do they make, where do they put their money, right? People are watching this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important. People are making purchasing decisions based on values alignment.
Yeah.
And so, you know, even if you manage to go through life and not, you know, massively step in it and get yourself essentially canceled for saying something that was insensitive, what you lose is sales from people who are looking for that values-based alignment in making their purchasing decision. It's like looking at like what your audience really is looking for when they're making a decision. Like, millennials want to know the story about where their coffee table was born, you know, like, and, you know, generally more and more people are really concerned about, like, I'm giving you money, what do you stand for, right? What are you supporting? You know, are you going to use the money I give you to oppress people that I care about? Or are you going to, like, that's a big deal to me. I don't want to give my money to somebody who's going to harm people.
Yeah, totally.
That's,
So what are some things that you are hoping people who do Stay Woke Not Broke, which I remember when you sent me the message and you're like, should I do this? And I was like, fuck yeah, you should do this. And like, okay, I don't know. And then it like sold out in like 20 seconds or some shit. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, and I have a waiting list. And I was like, told you.
yeah. So the goal of the program is to teach people how to create their own diversity statement, and also to content plan for social justice conversations. Like, this isn't just now, like this is always, right? And you don't want to be a flash in the pan. And this is part of not being a bandwagon jumper, is making a plan for how you're going to continue to engage in these conversations.
I
So
love
that,
that. Don't be a bandwagon jumper. That's going to be my new thing.
yeah, I
I'm
mean,
gonna
like,
take that and run with it. Okay.
fully commit. And then the other piece of that is around community guidelines and moderation policies, because that's been one of the key areas where people have struggled, is managing the conversations within their community and finding
Oh, girl, I think you
that
just made the understatement of the century.
kind
That's
of
where
love
people
here.
have really struggled in the conversations in their communities. Can we just have a moment? Girl,
I mean,
that's the understatement of 2020 right there. It's
yeah.
none of the pandemic isn't a big deal, and people are having a really hard time managing conversations in their community.
Yeah, no, I mean, and honestly, like, I have all the compassion in the world, because you know what, this is for a lot of people very new, right? Like, this is something that I've done. I've worked in kind of intercultural communication and anti-racism education for like 18 years.
Right.
So this is what I do. And lots of other people have been able to continue to operate their business without acknowledging the challenges faced by marginalized people. So this is now a time where people are being held to a higher level of accountability.
Yeah.
And that level of change can be difficult. So I definitely like that. That's why I want to do this, because I want to support people in succeeding and having those conversations. So yes, like, it is kind of an understatement that things have gone a little sideways lately in our little world, but like in the online space, and then but really it's about supporting better conversations, you know.
I think you are making such an important point, though, and this, I feel, is really getting lost among, and I think part of it is because people are tired, people are done, people are dying, people have had enough. And what's happening is we're setting up these platforms where we're like, listen, don't be a bandwagon jumper, make this a thing for real. And then when people fuck it up, because they're going to fuck it up a couple times, this takes practice. It's not like dismantling your own white supremacy within your own self is not a one-off moment where you're like, okay, I get it, I'm good, I'm not going to be an asshole anymore. This is a process that takes time. And I think your point to, you've been doing this for 18 years, I've been doing this for about 20 some odd years, right? Like, this takes time, and we are still doing the work, right?
Yeah, there's stuff that I'm realizing that, like, is oppressive that I didn't even consider because it has always been standard practice, right? There's always things that I'm waking up to and realizing, like, hey, this is something that we should really rethink.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I mean, I have my lens, like, I'm a disabled Indigenous woman, I'm a single parent, but, you know, I'm white passing. I don't have a lot of the challenges that some other people face because of how I look and what opportunities I've had available to me through my you know, very white family. And um, I don't know what it is to be queer and to struggle with things. I don't know what, there's a lot of different experiences that I just have no exposure to. And so
Yeah.
I'm learning as I go too. And I just want to create a space that is targeted towards learning things within a defined period of time that's safe for, you know, 15 to this round is 15 people, but I think next round will probably go to 20. But where we can kind of explore those things and have those conversations.
Yeah, I think that is such an important thing. I think that what you're talking about is really, I love that you're creating these opportunities for people to explore this stuff in a way where they're not going to get attacked or bullied or feel like they're not enough. Because one of the things that I think is happening, even for people, and I love that we're having this as an intersectional conversation, like you're bringing up, you know, ability and disability and Indigenous issues and queer issues. Like we've already identified all these multiple spaces where we collect. And I think that people make really big assumptions about the motivations of other people, even when people are being genuine. And we snap to this, well, you clearly don't get it, so you're just doomed to fail and forget about you. Instead of, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with what's happening with this white fragility conversation, but all of a sudden none of us are allowed to read white fragility anymore. Like there's this huge thing. And I'm like, but we're not just reading, we have to encourage reading all the books, all the things, not just reading white authors talking about racism, but reading all the authors talking about racism, and not just Black authors either, Indigenous authors, Latina authors, people of color across the spectrum authors. And oh, by the way, not just the able-bodied people, but the disabled people and people from the queer community, like really figuring out how are we opening our eyes to the beautiful mosaic of opportunity to learn out there, and not just focusing on one thing, right? And I think I love that you're creating a community for people to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely a barrier for me in deciding whether or not to even do this. Was like, I really struggled with like, is this a time for me to be having this conversation? You know, the conversation has been around Black lives, and I'm an Indigenous lady from Canada, like, you know, and while this has been work that I've done in my work in government and in Indigenous projects in digital marketing, it isn't something that I targeted a lot of my communication around. So for some people, I wondered, like people who don't know that this is what I've always done, is this going to look like bandwagon jumping? Like, is this going to be welcomed? And I mean, my marketing practice has been pretty general. I've had specific Indigenous projects, and I approach things with an intersectional lens, but you know, I wasn't sure how that would go necessarily, and how receptive folks would be. I mean, I've been published internationally on race issues, and I do talk about it on my personal Facebook a lot, but it was definitely tentative and nervous in first rolling things out. I mean, I'm glad I did, and I think that there's room for my voice in this.
There's room for all of our voices in this.
Exactly. And I think
really
that
is room for everybody.
I mean, it has to be a collaborative solution, because things have really gone offside. So we really do need to work together in order to find something. So,
and I think for those of you who are hearing this term intersectionality for the very first time, I encourage you to look up Kimberly Crenshaw, who is the first person who theorized about intersectionality. And she's got a great TED Talk video, and I'll put it in the comments for all y'all, because for some people, intersectionality is a new term that we throw around all the time, but it's a new term that many people outside of academia in particular don't have any idea even what it is or what it means. And so I will put a link to Kimberly Crenshaw's TED Talk up there so you can learn about intersectionality and have your tissues ready, because the end of it is really moving. They talk about Say Her Name, and they put up these pictures of these women who have been lost to violence against their Black bodies, and it's really powerful and beautiful and amazing. But I'll make sure to link that in the comments, because I think it's really important for people to understand where intersectionality comes from too.
For sure. Yeah. And I think that's partly, I mean, that was the other tentative thing when I was developing this program, is because this is just how I've always operated, and this is how I do business. It was really weird to like articulate the process by which you do that, and to try and explain it, right? Because it's just kind of because it's natural, and it's the way that I approach how I do what I do. So it was a little bit nerve-wracking. And I mean, I don't personally come from an academic background. You know, I don't have a degree, but I've learned all of these things through doing, and through interacting, and through engaging, and through learning from other people. So,
and I think it's a great opportunity for people to be able to work with someone who is, but like you've just created all of this out of not just your experience, but also connecting with other people in the world who also do this work. And
yes.
I think this is an invitation. What you're offering up is an invitation for people to really think about, how can you connect with other people that are doing this work, not so you can become an expert, but so you can really learn from them and grow from them and find your own voice in this so that you can become anti-racist.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really, one of my main goals in this is to help people empower other people versus help people save people,
Mm-hmm.
right? And really finding ways to support those conversations so
So,
that we can direct resources and energies towards people that are already doing the work and participate, but just being really led by what the community needs
mm-hmm.
and not just what our perception of what the community needs from our own lens.
Yes. So you have another thing that you've got going on called Done For You Diversity Statements. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so when I launched, I what I found was, I mean, it sold out pretty quickly and it was lovely. But what I found was that some folks were like, "You have a very pretty program, but I really just need a diversity statement. Like, could you please just write it for me?" And so I would love to support that also. So I just launched that yesterday in terms of if somebody wants to um, work with me to create a diversity statement. I mean, it's still a collaborative process. I'm not going to tell you what your values are. Like, you need to know what you believe um, and what you're doing about it. And I can create copy that's engaging and will share what you do in a way that's native to your brand voice, like that it's consistent with the rest of your copy
Mm-hmm.
and so that it comes from you. It doesn't sound like a canned response on Gmail or whatever, right? Like this is literally you sharing your truth.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the goal of the Done For You service, is to support people who are like, I just need one now. And because people are looking now, they're looking for your diversity statement now. So now is a good time to get one. Um, as part of my program, the students who create content around each lesson, I review it and provide feedback.
Nice.
So it is still a collaborative process within the group program. You're not left on your own with like, here's your checklist, good luck. Um, but the Done For You is a lot more hands-on, and I will actually create the copy that is consistent with your brand voice and help refine the information that needs to be in there and
So
and
incredible.
get you standing up for what you believe in publicly, proudly, and loudly.
Yay! Mika was wondering if you have access to that link to the spreadsheet where for the tech companies. Do you know where to find it?
Yeah, I can share it in the comments
Okay.
after for sure. I could send it to Mika.
Because I put the information about the Done For You um, diversity statements in there. Is there anything else that you really want to share with people before we finish this conversation?
I just really want to encourage people like watching. I know what my experience was scrolling through as everything was unfolding. Like there is a strong sense of like powerlessness. Like racism kills people. It's deadly. It's dangerous. It's horrible, and it can feel so big. And it can feel like, what could I possibly do? And I just want to really encourage that, you know, as a business owner, as a private individual, like we all have the ability to influence the people around us. We all have the ability to stand for something. We all have the ability to make a change within our own community. And that's kind of what I want to do through this program, is to give people the tools they need to have difficult conversations, to have, that's really where it hits, right? It's how you handle, you know, somebody who says something that's like horrific. It's how you handle a policy that gets in the way of people that you care about accessing what they need. So that's really what I'm looking to do, and just really to encourage. I shared with my program this Brene Brown quote that I love, and it says, "Daring leaders are never silent about hard things." And as entrepreneurs, we are leaders and we need to be daring and we need to not be quiet about this.
Yeah. Speaking of Brene Brown, she also put out another statement. She's been killing it on her podcast. So for those of you who have not listened to Brene Brown's new podcast, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you do it. But one of the things that she just talked about is being held accountable for racism and feeling shame is not the same thing as being shamed.
Yeah.
Woo! So she did a whole solo episode on her new podcast about racism, and I was like, dang, it's so good. It's so good. Jennifer Campbell just said, you are a wonderful educator, and of course you have the lens that you view the word, but you always have encouraged me to try and view my product and marketing message from various different perspectives. I'm so glad I joined Stay Woke Not Broke. It's pushing me to dig even deeper. I'm so grateful for your mentorship. Oh, that's lovely.
Jennifer is wonderful. I'm so proud. She does really amazing work around dismantling diet culture that like makes my heart so freaking happy.
I'm
and I
excited
just
now that I can connect with her.
Yeah, you definitely need to. She's amazing. She and Annie Breeze and her team are awesome. But yeah, it's really I think that's really important to keep in mind that discussions around cancel culture are often deflections around consequences and accountability, and just being real about like, is this cancellation or am I feeling the consequences of choices that I've made, and how can I reconcile? How can I make things right? And how can I learn more?
So good.
Yeah, I think
so
that
good.
I think there's room for lots of growth and lots of change, and that we all have a lot more power than we think we do.
Yeah. And I think we all have a lot more opportunity to change than we think we do.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you for inviting me. I so appreciate you and what you do in the world.
If people want to know more about you, where can they go?
You can look me up on Instagram, Alison Tedford, ALISONTEDFORD. My blog page on Facebook is Alison Tedford Writer at Sparkly Shoes and Sweat Drops. And you can find me on Twitter at Ali Spins.
Thank you so much for being here. I love you.
I love you. Thanks for having me.
Sure.